So now can we address A?
Right. Right. A, again, is a little bit more long-winded, and again, I will submit this for full public record. This, A, relates to references that I made with regard to use of the word exemplary when we were referring to audits, when I felt there were significant failings that were still, that at the time of the audit, and still failings that needed to actually be addressed. So,
may I ask who the internal auditor was?
Mr. Robin Gorham. So, if I start with this, Phil, I think things will become a little bit clearer.
Okay.
Mr. Gorham, as our internal auditor, has acted for this council since its inception 4 years ago. His fee for his services for this last audit was £7 and consisted of what I understood from him to be primarily an online meeting held with the clerk and Stevens, the RFO, earlier in the year. Since commencing the role of auditor, Mr. Gorham has seen this council move from a proactive council with a £24,044 precept to that of a moribund council, which was asked to recognise the need to significantly reduce its precept, at the time a figure down to 10,613, in recognition of an inflated financial reserve. At the time of the audit, the financial reserve stood at approximately £95,000. At one point this year, our financial reserve exceeded £102,000. This is a council that often blocks and frustrates community proposals, an example of this being my proposals to improve play, exercise and provide sports facilities on the playing field. But if requests for public monies come in from a local charity, then these seem to be accommodated. The existence of connected parties at certain financial points during the audit period, in my opinion, should have raised a red flag and were worthy of mention within the auditor's report. Last year, I witnessed monies from this council being passed across for an event organised and delivered by a local charity, Spooner Village Hall. Our chair, now in her third term, Mrs. Hurtson, Councillor Hurtson, is also a trustee of Spooner Village Hall. At the time of the audit, Mrs. Hurtson was also the charity's chair and had previously held the role of treasurer. Public monies at that time were not released by way of a grant to the charity, but as a succession of payments either across to Mrs. Hurtson or contractors chosen by her. Mr. Ward will recall that Councillor Lemon and myself questioned certain payments at the time as to whether this should have gone through as a grant. We then have the issue of the catering for the Village Hall event, selected from a shortlist of one, and then the resulting waste.
Waste?
Not surprisingly, any mention of waste does not appear in our minutes. This is because the event brief meeting, which is noted within the minutes to be undertaken, actually took place as a meeting down the pub and does not appear to have been minuted or treated as a council meeting, but more a get-together of a select few councillors. I myself was not invited to that meeting. At the time, I did attempt to discuss with the then Councillor Ward the debrief meeting and the waste that occurred by way of over-ambition of numbers and lack of attendance at the Tea Party event on the day, but these I felt were being closed down. There's also the issue of the fact that residents that did attend the event, of the 9 that I spoke to shortly afterwards, had no idea that the event had actually been paid for by the Community Council. When asked, all viewed it as a Village Hall event. As such, this council achieved no measurable goodwill from these public monies and this should have raised a red flag. We then moved to the other projects delivered in 2022-23 aside from the Jubilee. No substantial projects were delivered. The chair brought a plant for a Sutton residents to celebrate her 100th birthday, whilst Councillor Lemon and myself delivered a sign and a security chain for Sutton Wood, which at the time was a project belonging to Councillor Martin Lemon. My major project for adult exercise equipment was kicked into the long grass, and with those and my earlier discussed projects often belittled or ignored. An internal auditor should consider a council's internal systems, such as its standing orders, mandated policies and financial records. Our financial mandate is fine, but elsewhere we have a majority of our mandated policies that are now out of date, and our standing orders have been poorly amended in such a way as to add a clause that appears to grant individuals the right to challenge a fundamental right of a councillor to bring a motion to correct an error within a set of minutes at a meeting. This is not right, and again, if the standing orders had been considered, this would have been identified. An internal audit is also meant to provide an independent assessment of the council's operations and help to ensure accountability, transparency and good governance. But how is this possible when the fee is so little and by default limitations placed on time? The solution is often referred to as sampling, a process to drive down the need to look at everything to that of only a selection sufficient to give the auditor a reasonable basis on which to draw a conclusion. But what is reasonable when the fee is only £70? And this is where Robin Gorham comes back in. I raised certain red flags with him during a 25-minute telephone call. And at the end, I asked Mr. Gorham why he had missed what I considered notifiable concerns. His response was telling. After a long pause, Mr. Gorham replied, "I can only comment on what I'm shown." Council will recall that the online meeting attendees for the audit were Mr. Gorham, Mr. Ward and the clerk. There is no other record for that meeting. So in summary, the regularly used term exemplary cannot be attached to an audit when the outcome is flawed due to insufficient sampling, not identifying concerns. I stand by my earlier statement that significant failings existed at the time of the audit and many issues still exist. Certain individuals within this council appear to care more about shooting the messenger than learning lessons, improving standards and delivering community services. That is the end of my statement.
Okay. Stephen.
A couple of things. The audit. When the audit is done, it's not just an online meeting. The first thing the auditor does is sends out a very long, I think it's about 6 or 7 pages, questionnaire. That questionnaire we've used 4 years in a row. Within that questionnaire are hyperlinks to all the information, to every single minute for all the meetings, to all of our policies. He has full access to SharePoint. That is provided to him about a month in advance, so he can go through it at will and come back and ask any questions at any stage. So there is full visibility of everything we've done. So that's what I say about the audit. The reason Robin has only ever charged us £70 is because most councils dump a load of paperwork on his desk and go, "There you go, Robin, audit that." We are actually very proactive in our approach of showing him where all the information is. So we don't hide anything; it's all there for him to see. And that's why when we do the how do I do it? It was an hour, was it, or 30 minutes? Yeah. We were generally asking him questions about how the council can run better. So first of all, that's not quite the truth about the audit, Robert. Secondly, let's
hang on, which bit?
Sorry?
Which bit?
You said the audit was only a...
no, I said primarily it consisted of.
Primarily, right. And it wasn't just what we showed him, it was what he asked us to give him, and we gave him all of the information. So that's the audit. And that questionnaire was sent to everybody as well, all the councillors, so everybody had full visibility of it. I would just like to pick up another point on the audit. If the councillor had an issue with the audit, why did he not bring it up in the council meeting when the audit was put on the table? And why did the same councillor second that audit as being happy to accept it?
Because at the time, the explanation that was given by your RFO was reasonable. My issue
I
with
wasn't at the meeting, Robert. I had COVID.
Right. My issue and why I concentrated on the word exemplary is we have constantly used the word exemplary in connection with our audit outcomes.
Sorry. I asked, you made your statement.
Yeah.
So can we talk?
Oh yes, we can do that. Go
Okay. So I have a couple of questions.
on. Have you finished, Stephen?
No, I just want to make a
Carry on,
point.
Stephen.
For the Jubilee, we said as a council, and it's all minted again, what we wanted to do. There was a lot of sort of dragging of heels, and straight after Christmas, I recognised this in our phone, said, if you keep dragging your heels on delivering this, you're not going to get it done. So the first thing we need to do is agree a budget. Does the budget include the village hall tea party? I believe it does.
It does.
Did all of the receipts and all of the decisions before we actually spent money come back to this council? Are they limited?
They are.
They are. So how's that unlawful, Robert?
I haven't said it's unlawful.
What? You said it was a major failing, sorry, that
No,
one.
I said it was a failing. At the time, and this was the position that myself and Mr. Lemon took, we raised the issue of whether the monies going across
But
to
that's none of that is
the village
limited.
hall should have been treated as a grant.
But it wasn't monies for the village hall.
Well, it was monies for the village hall, wasn't
But
it?
why has this been? Why is talk
So
about
again,
that?
I'm coming back to the fact that again, we keep patting ourselves on the back, saying we're getting these exemplary outcomes when there are failings that are being regularly repeated. I attempt to bring up failings, and effectively my concerns are either ignored or effectively they're put down. I'm raising these again, and I said in that email I had sufficient
Right, enough.
concerns to actually contact the auditor, and I was transparent in terms of what I'd done.
Stephen, have you got any more to say?
Well, all to say is, would any of this be being discussed around this table today if I hadn't brought it? You had not brought any of this to any previous meeting, Robert. You just slanged it backwards and forwards in emails. It was me that said, if you've got serious concerns, you need to bring them to the meeting. That audit was April, May.
But you haven't been communicating with me in any way for
You're
6
right.
months.
I'm
Well,
That's what I've got to say. So I just wanted them on the table.
Phil.
I want to understand what they were.
Excuse me, I'm chair. If you don't mind.
Phil, who sets the £70 charge? Who
We
was
did.
No.
No.
The internal auditor sets it.
So
He builds
he chose how much he was going to charge, and he chose to charge £70. So that's irrelevant as to whether that's an appropriate figure or not. That's just the figure he chose, right?
Auditors range, as the audit's going, between £25 and £50 for a very small council and £140 for a large council.
So it's not outside of
a level 2 council.
So it's not outside of the normal realm
No,
of
it's
what
completely
it would be
bang
charged.
on.
And then my other question was, so that to me seems like a non-point. How has the council found this person?
He was recommended by MPTS. He's also qualified. He was a clerk for
He wasn't the only one recommended. We got given a list of about, I think it was 7 or 8. I phoned them all up and asked them what their charges were. I then brought it back to the council, and the council chose to go with Robin. That will be in the minutes way back in the end of the very first year.
So
he's probably got 10 or 15 councils as well that he does, doesn't he? He's quite
I don't know. I'm really
Robert,
and so it seems then that this person is someone who's recognised and qualified and competent to do the audit.
absolutely.
He is charging in the round amount of money that is not unreasonable. His finding is that the council is exemplary with all of the information that has been made available to him. Yes, he can only audit these things that he has available to him. It seems, Rob, that you're the only person that's got an issue with these significant failings. You're not an auditor. Not that I'm aware. So you may disagree with this finding, but that doesn't change that. That's just your opinion.
no, it's an opinion.
But it sounds like this guy is legitimate,
Capable.
legitimate. There's no reason to doubt the exemplary finding, from what I'm hearing.
I don't think the word exemplary appeared in the report. The word exemplary.
The word
used-
exemplary it appears here.
Yeah, it appears here, but I am not suggesting that Robin Gorham used the word exemplary
Well, I
in
think
the
you
report.
did.
The
In
word
your statement, I think you did.
no. The use of the word exemplary has been within this council over 2 years running.
Right.
Yeah. So that's where the word comes
And
from.
who
inserted that word? Did you insert that word?
What was in there?
I repeat. So Robin Gorham, I can't confirm to you tonight, because I haven't got the copy of the audit report outcome in front of me. My understanding is the use of the word exemplary has been within this council.
Okay.
So it's been from Stephen, it's been from others within this council. So effectively, if we want to centre on the
you can't
word,
evidence this at all.
But there's no evidence to support that, Robert.
Well,
so
we've
where's your
used-
evidence?
well, we don't do de minimis minutes. So
No.
if
but you
Stephen
can't-
turns around and
but
says
equally-
we've had an exemplary
equally-
report from the auditor this year, would I expect that complete statement to go into the minutes? No, I wouldn't. To
No,
turn around
but-
to
but
me now
you-
and
but
say
now
because you
you're
haven't
saying-
got a minute saying he used the word exemplary, you effectively that's a non-item, as you would say.
Mhm.
No, that's not right. If the word exemplary is currently doing the rounds, and I've got an issue with the word exemplary, there needs to be a conversation about that in some shape or
But
form.
wouldn't you have
We've
done
had
that?
the conversation.
Wouldn't you have done that when the report was written and presented to council?
And discussed at the time, presumably.
So I've never seen this word exemplary appear. So I don't know where that comes from.
That comes from within council.
Have you used that word, Stephen?
It's irrelevant. At
Yeah,
the end of the day,
It is
as Phil said,
irrelevant.
we've had an audit who was by an auditor who's qualified to do it, who the council chose to do it. He's audited us 4 years in a row. We've done exactly the same way. And I say again, the councillor sitting around this table is now complaining about the audit. It was the person who seconded it. I don't see what the issue is. I really don't. And I think it's almost slander what you're writing in emails, Robert. I'm sorry, it is.
And it's
You are,
malicious.
it's malicious.
No, it's not
It
malicious.
is malicious.
No, it's not malicious. No, I'm not. No, it's not malicious. If I have a concern within council, I expect to be able to raise it in an
You didn't
open
raise it,
open
Robert. It's
manner.
me that raised
If
it and put it on the table.
fact that I didn't raise it all the way back at X still
Why do
doesn't
we-
take
Why
away
do
the
we go,
issue.
how do we move this forward? Because we can argue about
Oh,
whether
I've-
someone said a thing or not, and whether
And we
this guy-
take it back
whether-
18 months, which is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Like, how do we move forward? Do we get a new auditor?
No, I think it's clear from the conversation that Robin Gorham had with me, there will be other things that he's looking at in connection with the outcomes for this council.
Okay, so
And that's fair enough.
So there's nothing to be changed until we get a new.
You cannot
or
make a
until we have a
change
new
because the audit has been done, the
No, of
outcome
course,
has been
No,
accepted.
That's what I'm saying.
So effectively, Robin Gorham comes back in, does what he does, and we see what happens next time round.
So,
If you
But if you
decide to,
don't have confidence in our auditor, is that what you're implying?
I'm not implying, I raised a number of red flags with our auditor, and the response from our auditor was, I can only comment on items that I'm shown. Now, he was able to give
But Stephen has made it quite clear that he made everything available.
Why would he make that comment to me then?
We've only got your word for that, Robert.
Indeed. So,
don't
shall we move this
can
on?
finish this straight away. The reason
Okay.
I said can you put those on the table is because the way they were sent to me was challenging me as the RFO to say I've done a poor job. He hasn't apologised. He hasn't provided any more evidence. So I'm sorry, I'm at it. There's no point in working in this environment. I've done my utmost for this council. I've done everything by the book. We've been audited 4 times and had, I'm going to use the term Robert, exemplary audits. If you want to put it on the table and you get treated like that, I'm not willing to be treated like that, particularly when I'm volunteering my time. I'm sorry. I gave you fair warning. I gave the council fair warning as well. I gave you 6 months warning that I was stepping down, and you needed to find another RFO, and you needed to someone to do SharePoint, take on all the credit cards and everything else in the bills. I'm sorry.
In your
Because-
shoes, I would feel exactly the same way. I think you treat us appallingly.
You're allowed your opinion. And Stephen was very clear in connection with his offer to this council that it was.
But have you just heard what the man has said?
I have, yeah. And I at no point did I sit down and say I'm pointing the finger at Stephen. What I said was we cannot keep slapping ourselves on the book saying that everything is fine when we have a significant financial reserve, community projects that are not being given the respect that they should be given.
I don't think that we'd be even having this conversation if your play equipment thing had been taken further forward.
And
Phil, we wouldn't. You've hit the nail on the head. We wouldn't be taking things forward if those projects had been given the respect.
But we've had no proposal, Robert, with three quotes.
Can I just
Sorry,
set the record
Steve.
straight on the play equipment as well? There were 2 people who weren't in the meeting. I don't know when it was now. Was it January, February time, or even before Christmas? We came to a council meeting and there were 3 proposals on the table. And so I even said to Dawn, I said, which one are we looking at here? Because Robert had done a proposal, Julian had done one, and so had Martin. And there was a load of information in there. And I went, this is ridiculous. It's not even something we can vote on tonight because it's not comparing apples with apples. Someone wants this sort of thing, someone wants that.
Exactly.
And you remember, Robert, I said, why don't you go away, get together with Julian and Martin and come up with one proposal? That has never come back to council. So it wasn't treated with contempt, it just wasn't presented in the format that the council could take forwards.
That's incorrect
That
because
isn't incorrect, Robert. We can go back through
This is my 3rd meeting here. How much is there anything material stopping you from having brought it again?
yes,
Nothing.
because effectively if it's been struck out, is it a 6-month rule or 12 months?
It was
Going
never
about.
It was never struck out. There was never a proposal there.
And there's no rule that you can't bring it back.
There wasn't a vote, was there?
But my items never, from the moment that walkout occurred, and effectively my items didn't get heard.
But
My
there was
items-
no proposals
My
with
items
those
never,
items,
but they were
Robert.
on an agenda, and then they were never on an agenda.
There was no proposals, there was no pricing, there was nothing. You know how the council works, Robert. You put a proposal together with 3 estimates. You've just quoted that exact rule back at me with reference
Where
to
it's
the-
over £300.
Well, what was the
I've
play
got
equipment?
pop-up nets for the kiddies was like £65.
Where's
The
that?
major nets were 8. But I've turned round to this council and said I've put formal templated proposals together, as I did that night, and Stephen will attest to the fact that the only individual out of the 3 that he's named that actually went to the bother of putting a full templated proposal together with the 3 options and a recommendation at the end of it was me. Julian coming to this council with, I think you should spend the money with this provider, and Martin coming to the table saying, no, I think you should spend the money with that provider, even though it's twice the price.
But as
Stephen's
said,
quite right.
It wasn't
And
apples
the
and apples.
outcome of that, when I reached out to both Councillor Halls and Councillor Lemon, Councillor Halls never returned my calls. For his information. Councillor Halls never returned my calls. Councillor Lemon came back to me and said, with respect, my proposal at £20,000 is excessive compared to the 8,500 that you put together. Go with the 8,500.
It never came back to council, Robert. It never came back to council.
It did come back to council because the 2 of you.
Robert, you cannot.
Surely this is the point of minutes, isn't it?
Yes.
Is this not the point of minutes?
It did come
Now,
back to council.
So there is
It's not come back to council.
So
with a proposal.
there must be if it did,
Yeah.
you say it did, so can you produce the minutes of the meeting where it came back to council and presumably was voted on, or something happened Can you produce that?
I can
Not
produce
now.
you the minute on the basis of it returned to council
Okay.
and 2 councillors asked for confirmation of locations as to where this equipment was physically in use,
Okay.
because they wanted to then actually check what was the
No, that was
quality of the units
Robert,
in
there's
terms
a
of.
misunderstanding here.
That was the same meeting,
It was.
and we said another idea, if you go away to relook at the proposal, is to go and actually talk to other councils and see what the council had that similar equipment put on their playing field. Because the trouble is, we had a load of pictures with that cost 15, that cost 20. We had no idea of the robustness of them, the upkeep on them. We said, go away, talk to other councils and find out what other councils think. That was all in the same meeting.
But
And did I not come to a meeting, Stephen, and give you a piece of paper with locations for all of the 3 manufacturers?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the response to what I was asked to do at the previous meeting. Where is the equipment installed so that if need be we can go and have a look at it? I provided that information to council.
But we never went to vote.
Your answer, I think the
Yeah.
bottom line again was that proposal about play equipment has never been brought back to
No,
council
it
properly
hasn't.
for it to be voted on.
Okay.
Full stop.
And I'd like to remind everyone that we're talking about financial item 7A,
Yeah.
which this whole thing, as I said, I don't think that if this, you've got to be in your bonnet about this, which doesn't seem to, for whatever reason, I don't understand, I'm not familiar enough with the procedures, whether it's being followed correctly or not. But this whole last section is all because you've just got to be in your bonnet about this play equipment.
I didn't bring these motions for it.
You wrote them in an email.
So this is.
So should we expand on? Do we want to expand upon it? Anyone else want to expand on it again, or should we move forward?
John, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
I'm not going to comment on anything at this moment. What I think is that if there are proposals, they should be put on the table. We need as council to vote, and we need to move this on and not have this keep reoccurring
Absolutely.
on the council meetings. One way or the other, they're going to be voted a yes or a no. They need to be on the table, like everything else, with 3 clear quotes, and then we can look at those and decide whether we move forward and which one we go with. And that, if Robert's got those, put them on the table and we'll vote them.
Absolutely.
And if we have got those, can we do it next meeting and pass this through?
And if we choose not to go forward with something, then that's something you have to accept as well, Robert.
I have no problem with accepting an outcome from council.
Okay.
My difficulty in the past is I would prepare formal proposals, they would go in, and they wouldn't be treated with respect. Now, at the end of the day, that whole scenario back in November, because it was in November last year, I was the only one that put in a templated proposal with the 3 quotes, with the background. The very fact that a councillor turned round and said, having seen the agenda item, and I have no idea why he did it, here is a print off from another supplier, I think you should use this. And another councillor turned round and said, and here's a print off from another supplier, I've had a look at it and I think you should need this.
But isn't
What
that
neither of them did was actually bring in a templated proposal.
But isn't that the whole point of what we're doing at council? We're all enthusiastic.
Where do you stop,
supporters.
Sue?
You stop at the point where you go, we've got three suppliers who are providing the same equipment.
So why wasn't that position on the night when you had 3 suppliers on the template?
A council is a democratic environment.
Yes.
Unless the majority around that table votes, the proposals are move forward. Okay. On that night, the council decided there was not enough information on the table to take it forward. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now, Stephen, before you have just effectively told us that you will no longer
Absolutely.
help us.
Sorry.
Is there anything we can do to make you change your
No.
mind?
Because it's the same reasons for why I said I wouldn't run for council 6 months ago. Nothing changes. And it's not going to change. So I'm sorry. I can't put up with it any longer. I've given it my best shot, and the level of abuse we get is just not on. Sorry.
But that is just from one individual.
I'm afraid it is. And you know, Sue, I've had loads of discussions about I'm very community-minded and I know that it's going to leave you in a hole, but I'm sorry, I cannot do any more.
I understand, Stephen. But how many councils do we need to lose and etc.?
One.
one.
Sorry. I'll do those agenda items and I'll step out. The payment ones.
Well, I just want to make a note for the minutes. Thank you for all of your help. I don't know how we'd have coped without you. And I'm just incredibly sad that it's come to this, Robert. And I do think...
If we, Steve, you said, what could make you change your mind? Nothing. What if we lost one councillor? Would that make you change your mind?
Yeah, of course we would. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'd be back on the council then.
Interesting.
I'd more than happy to continue doing our phone. I'd more than happy to sit around this table. I'm more than happy to pull proposals together and put them on this table as well. And discuss them with reasonable team spirited people, being treated people with respect. Yeah, absolutely I would.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item? Right, I'm going to move it forward. Right, 8.
I have